What's happening, guys? Billy Davidson here. I want to talk about how I started a parking lot striping business. I've gotten this question from a lot of our students, and I've told the story to them privately a little bit here on YouTube, but I think you might find this quite interesting if you kind of want to start a new business. Even if it's not parking lot striping, this can kind of give you an idea how I got started in parking lot striping. First, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to 3 of our newest students to the All Pro Parking Lot Striping course. We have Gregory, we got Timothy, and Fred, all 3 that has joined the All Pro Parking Lot Striping course the last week here in August 2024. So I'm looking forward to working with these 3 guys in particular. They're our newest members. I've talked to all 3 already, and I know their area quite well. And I think they're going to do really good in the parking lot striping industry, especially using the tools and knowledge that we train in the All Pro Parking Lot Striping course. If you're interested in that, there'll be a link down in the first pinned comment and the description. So let's hop right into this, how I got started in the parking lot striping business. So for 31 years, I've been pressure washing professionally. And about my 3rd or 4th year, I don't remember the exact time frame, but about a 3rd or 4th year, I was doing quite a few commercial accounts in our local surrounding area here in southern Louisiana. And, you know, pressure washing business was going good. We were just making money. The money we were making back then was quite much more than some of our friends that were working at warehouses or driving trucks and things of that sort. You know, it was 5, 6, 7, 8 times the money they were making, we were making pressure washing. So and that's the way it was. You know, we were working really hard, marketing door to door, flyers, that sort of thing. And it was working. You know, this was long before Google and YouTube came out. So keep that in mind as you hear this story. So back then we were marketing in the yellow pages and newspapers and local free magazines and automobile magazines. We were just running these business size business card size ads in some of these papers and circulations in our area, and was getting a lot of traction. And we were working for this one commercial account about every 2 weeks. We'd go out there and clean their dumpster pads, and they had a couple dumpster pads, and that turned into pressure washing their sidewalks about once a month. And then their front entrance about once a month, and then the rear loading dock about every couple months. So this client I was working for was starting to be a pretty good size revenue source for my pressure washing business. And I made friends and, you know, started having, you know, a good working relationship with the general manager. He had been there for a few years already, and he liked his building to be clean. So a lot of times he would call if it was a bird poop on a window, or a bird nest, or a wasp's nest formed, or someone spilt some food or drinks in the front entrance or the sidewalk. So he was keeping his place nice and clean. And I never once even thought about parking lot striping or painting parking lines at that point. Never occurred to me. And the only time I ever really thought about parking lines was when I was trying to park at a shopping mall or something, and I couldn't see the parking lines. They were too faded to park properly, especially at nighttime or in bad weather. You couldn't see where to park. That's the only time I ever thought about parking lines personally. And it was a nuisance not being able to see the parking lines, but that was as far as, you know, I was thinking into it. So this general manager approached me and my brother. And shout out to Ben if you're watching. I know he watches a lot of our videos too. And me and Ben was pressure washing, and he approached us about painting the parking lines. And at first, I just kind of denied the job. You know, I respectfully declined it. We didn't know anything about it, wasn't really interested in it. And that was it. So about 2 weeks later, we were back out there cleaning his dumpster pad again. Now, this was before I started training guys how to clean dumpster pads. Then back then I thought everybody was pressure washing dumpster pads, because I was, you know, I figured it was a no-brainer. And then when I got on here to YouTube and start talking to more and more people, I realized that nobody was doing that either. So we started training on dumpster pads, and So it's kind of strange how some of this has evolved. We started out pressure washing dumpster pads for this particular client. We started washing his building, cleaning windows, cleaning the sidewalks. And like I said, it was a great revenue source. So once he approached me about the parking lines, I declined it, didn't know anything about it. 2 weeks later, I'm back out there again. He mentions it again. And he's like, hey, I really need our parking lines painted. Is there any way y'all could handle that or know someone that could do it? And I was still like, no, sir, I never, you know, like I said, I never even crossed my mind about it. So he told me, he was like, well, we got $6,500 in a budget to repaint the parking lines. And look, at that moment, I'm like, okay, now you got my attention. I had no idea it would pay that much. Now, granted, this was over 2.5 decades ago. So $6,500 back then was I mean, you could pretty much, you know, get a lot, you know, you can almost get a slightly used car for that price. So it got my attention. And look, $6,500 is a lot in 2024. So think about 1994, 1993, 1996. Imagine what that money could have bought even back in those days. So went to our local Lowe's. Back then, this was before Lowe's started building the huge big box stores around our area. It was these small little neighborhood Lowe's, if you will. And they had everything there you needed. So I went in there and I was bumbling around the paint section. And the only thing I had ever really painted before that was like bathroom, a doghouse, a front porch. You know, just your general round the house things to paint. And I was looking through paint cans. I seen buckets of paint and spray cans, but none of them had anything about parking lines on it. So I was at a dead end again. Now, granted, this was before YouTube. It was before Google. It was before the internet, before search engines. Matter of fact, I had a flip phone and a beeper. The flip phone was like incoming calls and outgoing calls. It was 25 cents a minute or somewhere in that neighborhood. So we didn't use that thing much. And also it didn't have internet. You know, this was before text messages came along. For some of these guys in a younger crowd, you probably don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but some of the older guys out there, y'all know, when we had a beeper, we'd get a page, you know, from the office, and we'd have to run to a payphone if it found one that was working. So that's why I got a flip phone, and it was expensive. I'm sorry, I don't even think it was a flip phone. I think it was like an old Nokia break phone, and then we went into flip phones. So just to kind of date this time area we're talking about. So I went into that Lowe's, and they had an older gentleman that was working in the paint section. I guess he mixed colors and whatever, helped customers. And he approached us and asked if we needed some help. And I was like, sure, absolutely. I told him what we were looking to start doing for this one customer. All I really want to do is this one customer, try to get that job, make that money, and also keep that customer happy, because that was my pressure washing customer. I really wasn't interested in continuing to do it. So he showed us around a couple different paints. And like he was saying, you know, there's all types of different paints. And even now there's all types of different traffic paints and parking lot striping paints. But back then he was describing, okay, you got exterior paint. If you're going to paint the outside of your house, you got interior paint, like you paint a bathroom. You got spray cans, you got automobile paint, you know, things like that. Well, none of those type of paints is going to work for what we want to do. So he was showing me some traffic paint. And now this gentleman didn't have a lot of experience parking lot striping. He worked for the Louisiana Department of Transportation, and then he had retired and went to work for Lowe's. And like I said, it was an elderly gentleman, and he never really done the striping himself, but he had seen it done. He'd kind of been around it a little bit. So he knew way more than I knew, but what he knew, looking back on it, was not much, but it was enough to spark our interest and get us moving in the right direction with striping. So he offered to come out and kind of on his day off. God bless him. He's, you know, thinking back on it, he was elderly then. He's probably gone by now. You know, it's been right at 27, 28 years ago. It just occurred to me. But he came out, he spent about 30, 40 minutes out there, and he's kind of showing us. Now, granted, I didn't have any equipment either. So he's kind of showing us how to hand paint these lines, and we had a bunch of them. So he did helped us with 3 or 4, and we was taking a look at it, and man, they were perfect. They come out beautiful. And compared to the old line standing there, you know, looking at the new line, I'm like, wow, you know, how amazing it was to be able to perform that and get that result. So he kind of got it set up on the different types of paint we need to use and stuff, different colors. And so we kept going back to Lowe's. I would see him in there. We was getting the paint to do the job, got the job done, went back and reported that to him. He had went and looked at it, said, look great. Well, that general manager also loved the work. You know, once he seen what we could do, we, you know, went ahead and finished it all. And at the end of the job, I think it took us like 3 or 4 days. And it was hard work, like very challenging back then with no equipment. Submitted my invoice, and about 3 weeks to 4 weeks later, a check shows up for $6,500. And I was just amazed, like, okay, maybe we can, I started thinking maybe we can start a business doing this. But again, I still really didn't know what I was doing, to be honest with you, even though we had did that one job and got lucky with it. So we went back to that elderly gentleman, and he was telling us about some equipment that you can purchase, but he really didn't know where to get it. So I was checked with back then Sherwin-Williams. I checked with Northern Tools magazine. They were around back then, and just was kind of coming in, got some more information, seen some equipment that we might could use. Back then, they had 2 different types of parking lot striping machines. Some of your older guys out there, you may remember some of the first striping machines were conventional. The ones we use today are airless. They don't use air to propel the paint. They use a piston or either a diaphragm pump to squeeze the paint through an orifice where at a high pressure, 2,000-3,000 PSI, even 1,500 PSI, where a conventional parking lot striping machine used a air hopper that you would pressurize with an onboard air compressor, pressurize the paint to whatever an air compressor would do, 150 PSI. And it would basically have the air on top, the paint on the bottom, and the air pressure would push the paint through a line and through a spray tip. Almost kind of the way they spray cars in shops with the little cup guns, and they use an air compressor for that. And it would atomize the paint pretty decent. But those machines, I've used some of them. They're not as good as the ones today, obviously. Technology has advanced. So there was 2 different types of machines. So we went ahead and bought an airless. It was a good machine. We made a lot of money with it, but didn't know how to push a straight line, how to clean the machine out, how to not break the machine. We had no idea. So we got to playing with this machine, and I forget what it cost back then, maybe like a couple $1,000s. So out of that $6,500, we had paid ourselves for our time and effort, me and my brother, and the other part of the money, we just bought this equipment with it. So we practiced and practiced and practiced with it. And I started trying to market my parking lot striping business to my pressure washing customers. Like I said, we had been pressure washing for a while, and we were successful with it. So one of the next job we had with this equipment was a parking garage in New Orleans. And I'm gonna tell you about anxiety, guys. I don't know if y'all experience it, and I don't experience it much, but every now and then you get it, and we thought we had everything dialed in with this machine, and we went to this parking garage, and little did we know the owner was there at the parking garage. So we greet him. I'm already starting to get anxiety at this point. I'm shaking his hand. We get the machine off the truck, and I know I've practiced with it, but I'm very inexperienced and didn't have the training I need. Like today, get to training with us, you know, the All-Pro Parking Lot Striping course. It's going to teach you everything you need to know. Well, back then we didn't have that. We had no one to go to, no one to mentor, no one to call, really. So me and my brother pulled this machine off our truck. We loaded up with paint, and this guy's not going away. He owned, at the time, 7 parking garages in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was pretty good-sized garages. And there was a lot of money involved. To us, it was. And we wanted to make sure, you know, we did it. So they had like 6 or 7 floors to these parking garages, different parking decks. And he's standing out there watching us. I think he might have detected that we were nervous and we were new. And I think that might have made him nervous. So he wanted to make sure we do what we were doing. So me and my brother get this machine out. We get, you know, in a parking lot stripe machine, it's not just plug and play. You got to pull this thing out. There's a dozen things you got to do to it to get it dialed in to stripe that 4-inch line straight. And it doesn't stripe a straight line by itself too. That's a big myth. A lot of guys think you just pull a trigger and it goes stripe a straight line. No, you got to keep it straight. So you got to know how to practice for that. But we were practicing wrongly. And we didn't know how to practice. So I always tell guys, you know, they're always saying practice makes perfect. And I don't agree with that. It's practicing perfectly makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you're practicing wrongly, you develop bad habits early on. And forever and ever, amen, you will have banana lines. It's hard to break those habits once you kind of get that muscle memory. So when we're teaching it, we're teaching guys to practice perfectly and create good habits when striping early on. So obviously we didn't have that luxury. So we got this machine and my brother gets behind the handlebars and I'm trying to talk to the gentleman there, just to try to throw some interference his way, you know. And I noticed my brother, he pulls the trigger and he nails the first line perfectly. I'm like, big sigh of relief. He lines up for the second line, boom, nails it. Third line, nails it. So the guy's like getting comfortable with this, you know. That fourth line, my brother pulls the trigger and he's off about 1.5 inches on his start. And, you know, we're trying to fake it. You know, we go over there with a little wire brush, clean it up. He starts over and hits it perfectly. So there on after he starts, you know, striping and just out of sheer nerves, you know, we were just nervous. So the guy leaves and we just had to stop for a minute just to kind of regroup our thoughts. We got lucky is what happened. And I can only imagine if we'd have got that machine out the truck and spilt paint on the ground or didn't stripe a good line, you know, the first few while that guy was standing there, that could have been a disaster. And, you know, like I said, we got lucky. You may not. You may. You know, if you don't get the proper training. That being said, that's what started my striping career. After that, and look, it was challenging for years. Nowadays, it's pretty much on autopilot, as it should be. And you should get there too after maybe your 4th or 5th year. Have everything dialed in on autopilot. If you get the proper training, you might can cut that time in half. You know, somewhere around 50%. Time frame, maybe 2 to 2.5, 3 years. You should have everything on autopilot where you're not necessarily striping every day yourself. You got employees doing it, that sort of thing. But like in our case, after about that 5th year, we were comfortable with just about anything that we was going to see in the parking lot. We'd stripe dozens and dozens and dozens of parking lots at that point, maybe even 100, 150 lots at that point. Still the same piece of equipment. And we was making money. So fast forward all these years later, I grabbed my iPhone and start recording some of our work. And I don't even know what made me do that. It's like an old iPhone I had. This is maybe 6 or 7, 8 years ago. And I was sharing it with my friends, you know, text messaging was around, you know, this is later, you know, cell phones got better, okay, Google and YouTube and all this. So, you know, I was striping for all these years and was not able to share it with anybody. So I'm sharing this with my friends and stuff. Well, I see this little share icon on my phone and it said share to YouTube. And I clicked it and, you know, I like hit upload or whatever. I forget what it was. It was a long time ago and forgot about it. So a few weeks later, I run into a friend at Applebee's, and I wasn't even supposed to meet him there. I seen him there. He said, man, I seen your video on that parking lot striping. Really interested in it. I was like, what video? I'd almost forgot about it. And he pulls it up on his phone. I was like, oh my God. I was like, people's been watching that video. I started getting a little embarrassed, like all of a sudden. I didn't even think nobody was even going to watch them. But so that's how we got started in the parking lot striping business and putting it here on YouTube. It's really all by accident. It's funny how God works. So fast forward, we still striping parking lots. I've seen people watching our YouTube videos. I didn't even know how to title things. Some of our old videos are still, if you go to our channel and scroll all the way down, some of them still don't even have titles to it. It's got like untitled, so we didn't know what we're doing. But people were still finding them and watching them. Like I had one that got like 20,000 people had watched it. And I was like, that's just amazing, And this was like 6 or 7 years ago. So fast forward, several years later, I start paying more attention to it. And that's where we're at now, making YouTube videos for parking lot striping and pressure washing. And not only, guys, parking lot striping really has changed my life, because although my pressure washing business has done well all these years, there were times when it got slow. I could name off a few. When the economy dipped, homeowners wasn't wanting to spend money. So we kind of lost the residential side of our pressure washing business, but we still was doing a lot of commercial. So you got to have ways to be diversified. And I really feel that parking lot striping is a way to diversify. If you're pressure washing, if you're doing lawn care, we've trained guys in the construction business for parking lot striping. Sometimes they have an off season. Roofers as well is a big one. Painters, house painters, they make good striping companies as well, because it's kind of a lateral move. So, I thank God every day for parking lot striping, because when my pressure washing company business did slow down, a lot of times striping would pick back up. And what a lot of people don't really realize with parking lot striping, there is ADA codes, and I didn't know this early on, but there's ADA codes, which is federal mandated laws that tells a business that they have to have certain parts of their parking lot, without getting into a lot of legal details, but certain parts of their parking lot has to be painted and striped and in good condition with proper colors. There's a lot of rules and regulations go into that. So that federal law is in place. Anytime a business is opening, anytime they pull permits, and sometimes just for surprise inspections. And the agency that enforces that usually is the fire marshal. And I don't know if you know much about fire marshals. Fire marshals do have a lot of control and power over some of those law enforcement regulations when it comes to parking lots. For one, their fire lane markings is non-negotiable when it comes to where they need to be in the type of markings that need to be down for fire lanes, for obvious reasons. Is real important, especially apartment complexes and shopping malls. And the ADA codes and regulations are, again, non-negotiable. There's no, if you can do it and maybe I can do it or I'll get around to it. Once those enforcement persons come on property, that work will be done and performed at some point, or the business will face daily fines and perhaps even be closed. So, whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't really matter, but you can take advantage of those rules and regulations and laws and the enforcements and create a business around it. And that's what's really good about parking lot striping and painting parking lots. That's why I'm so passionate about it, is because I know if you are even thinking about starting a business, maybe you want to start thinking about painting parking lots, and I can help you every step of the way through the All-Pro Parking Lot Striping course and our mentorship that we offer on the back end. So Basically, what that means is once you go through the striping course, you take the test, you get your certificate of completion, and you start landing some of your first parking lot striping jobs through methods that we teach how to market at really low cost. We're going to be there with phone and text and email support. I'll have you send me pictures and videos. We'll hop on phone calls. Matter of fact, I help you develop your first few estimates. I'm not going to hold your hand for 10 years, but for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs, I would like to see this information that you're looking at. That way we can help you develop your pricing strategy. Oftentimes I'm working with these students and they don't realize how much money you can charge for painting parking lines. We had this one student not too long ago. He was on charge like $2,700 to repaint some lines, which would have been good money. But I looked at the plans. I seen a few things in there where he kind of missed. And so we got that price up to $41.75, and he got the approval back in 30 minutes. So he was about to leave a good bit of money on the table. So, you know, well over $1,000 because he just didn't know. So that's where our mentorship is going to help you on that back end. And again, we're going to do this for the first few jobs. And usually after that, my students are off and running. And a lot of times I don't hear back from them unless they send in a video testimonial or calling me about a really big job that they've completed and want to share the good news. And we encourage those calls as well. So as you go through the All-Pro Parking Lot Striping course, I encourage everyone that has done it in the past, get you a dedicated notebook and have it there with you as you watching our training pods. It's a lot of behind the scenes footage in these training pods as if you was there with us in our crew working alongside of us, explaining things. You hear conversations between you and between myself and my crew about different layouts and different challenges in a parking lot. We teach you how to price them, which paints to use, which machines to purchase, which paints not to use, what machines not to purchase, how not to break your machine straight out of the box, because you can. I've seen that happen before, where someone gets a brand new machine and, you know, they uncrate it in their garage, and within 10 minutes, they've hurt something on the machine. A lot of times the warranty doesn't cover user error, so think about that, you know. So we teach all of that, 14 hours of online video training that can help you get started in a parking lot striping business, so you don't have to go through some of the trial and error that I had to go through starting my parking lot striping. And, you know, not to be said you're not going to make some errors. You will. It's going to be challenging, but I can promise you that it's going to be very gratifying. You'll find a passion for it. And on the back end, the money is really, really good. So I hope this video helps, guys. Again, there'll be a link and some more information down in the first pinned comment in the description. And now I've told my backstory on how I started a parking lot striping business. If you want to tell your story down in the comment section below, I would love to read each one of them, and I will respond to them because those is very interesting to me, how you got started, or whatever business you got started, whether it's landscaping, roofing, car detailing, whatever business you got started. I would love to hear your story down in the comment section below. Again, I'm Billy Davidson here with BillyDavidsonVIP.com, and I hope to see you all in the next video.